friends. It is Christy Hughes. I am back with another episode of Rock the Damn Boat. I enlisted the help of ChatGPT to maybe give me, a little more polished of an intro. So I am going to start with a couple of those options today, and that way you'll know a little bit more about what this podcast is about. Maybe one of them will feel authentic to me, and maybe we will together decide maybe I'll put the poll out there and you guys can decide on the Spotify poll which intro sounds the most like me. I don't know, ChatGPT, she's pretty smart. She is getting to know me. So she thinks that my concept is honest, punchy, and super relatable, which I can appreciate. She does flatter me some. Option one, empowered and relatable. Welcome to Rock the Damn Boat, the podcast for recovering people pleasers, truth tellers, and anyone ready to bleh, stop. Apparently, we're going to rule that one out because I can't say it. Stop playing small. I'm Christy Hughes, and I created this space to shed light on the conversations we've been too afraid to have, the ones we avoid out of fear of rejection, guilt, or shame. Together, we'll unpack what it means to speak up, set boundaries, and live unapologetically, even when it rocks the damn boat. All right, so there was option one. I don't know that I can say stop playing small every week. I gotta work on that one. Option two, conversational and playful. Hey friends, I'm Christy and you're listening to Rock the Damn Boat. If you've ever bitten your tongue to keep the peace or said yes when every part of you wanted to say no, this one's for you. We're diving into the messy, real stuff that people pleasers like me have spent years avoiding. It's time to have the hard conversations, shake things up, and learn to stand tall even when it makes waves. Oh, I'm kind of digging that one. Option number three, bold and vulnerable. I'm Christy Hughes, and this is Rock the Damn Boat. For years, I lived to keep everyone else happy until I realized that staying quiet to avoid rejection was sinking my own ship. This podcast is about breaking that cycle. We're talking about the things polite society tells us to keep to ourselves, from boundaries and burnout to self-worth and speaking truth. If you're ready to stop tiptoeing and start living louder, welcome aboard. Ooh, I don't know. Those are pretty good. So I'm kind of digging number two, but maybe number three is the way to go. I don't know, but that gives you lots of information about what this brand new podcast is about. I am, again, Christy Hughes. I live in Texas. I own a yoga studio. I was raised in Texas, raised in the Bible Belt, followed a lot of what that means in culture, and definitely respected and loved my two grandmothers dearly. I wrote a book about them and my sobriety journey called Strong Roots, Wayward Soul. And because of being raised in the church and being raised with ideals that my grandmother set forth for our family, I always felt like I wasn't living up to expectations. I felt a lot of shame, especially when I started drinking at a young age. And that became part of who I was and my lifestyle. It became really difficult from a mental health standpoint to function without alcohol. And there's a lot to my story. Again, you can read my memoir, or we'll start to unpack that over future episodes. But I am ready to step into this new, bigger version of me. I am 5'2.5", so it's definitely tough for me to play it big in a big way. And even watching back some of my public speaking videos and my friend recording some new footage the other day, I realized that I tend to talk with my hands but in a very controlled manner. So I might keep my elbows into my ribs, or if I say raise your hand, I'm only raising mine halfway. What is that all about? I am here to talk about some things that have been difficult for me to talk about, and maybe that helps open the door for you to see things from a different perspective, maybe to relate to something, or to just talk about topics that might not otherwise be discussed. And today, we are talking about pretty broad topic and can definitely be a little bit, this could be a potentially spicy topic, but always I am looking to give my opinion, to share a little bit about my story and my background, and help normalize things that people might not feel comfortable with. So I think we can all agree that we have a mother. Someone gave birth to us. We are all here on this planet because we have a biological mother. Whether or not you have a relationship with your mother, that's going to vary from listener to listener. I understand that the role of a mother may not look the same for every family. And certainly, I have in my life a more traditional family structure. My parents have been married for over 50 years. My mom and I have been very close for most of my life. There's certainly times when I was a teenager or things that we were going through as a mother-daughter pairing that wasn't always, sometimes it was oil and water. And I hear friends talk about their teenage daughters or even teenage granddaughters at this point, and understand that that is a universal truth. It might start to get a little bit younger now that girls are exposed to things much earlier on than I was in my life, but it definitely is a universal truth that teenage daughters are typically rebellious, dig their heels in. Boys have some different sort of pattern, I think, but back to the matter at hand, we all have a mother. I learned, so I am one of 100% of people on the planet who have a mother. I was looking into some statistics for this episode and learned that I am in a smaller minority than I expected, of just 15% of Americans, according to Psychology Today, 15% of American women age 45 or older who do not have children. Whether that was by choice or infertility, only about 15% of American women age 45 or older, and I'm 50, so at the point that you would have had like childbearing years, 15% of us do not have kids. That is 1 in 7. And to help me put that in perspective, I thought about my yoga class that I taught last night. So there were 7 students who attended. I was teaching, so that was 8 of us in the room together. And if I recall from left to right, I was the only person. No, there were 2 of us. One of them is another teacher at the studio, and she is just 31. So she's still in the 31 to 45 who potential to be a mother. So out of 1 out of 7, I was definitely the 1 out of 7 who is past childbearing years, and I don't have kids. And I want to talk a little bit about that decision for me and what that looked like in my life, and just shed some light on this topic and help give you a perspective if you are in the 85%. Maybe give a little perspective on what it's like to have conversations with people and to have an inner knowing that you've made a decision that it will be a lifelong decision. And are you okay with that? And especially when you come to my age at 50 and deciding, are you okay with that? So I was 25 when I got married, and I didn't really want children when I got married, and my husband at the time didn't either. Throughout my teenage years, well, if we go further back, so let's go about 10 years further back to being 15. And when I was 15, I was really starting to rebel. I think back, my mom said she loved me, but she didn't really like me, which I think can be true for a lot of different relationships. So, yeah, sometimes in your marriage, you're like, I love you right now, but I don't really like you. So it happens to all of us, right? I was rebellious. I was sneaking out at night. I was madly in love with a boy who was, bad boy. I've seen some references to My So-Called Life because Jared Leto is in a new movie, and everyone remembers My So-Called Life, and it was only out for a year, but everyone had a Jordan Catalano in their life. So Jared Leto played Jordan Catalano, the bad boy, kind of loner, always a little moody or broody and brooding. Chickens get broody, brooding. So kind of that James Dean character, right? And that was a person that I had in my life. I was head over heels for him, and he apparently had another girlfriend who got pregnant. So we stopped seeing each other because of that. There were 1,000 other reasons that I should not have been seeing him, but that was the final straw at that time. We ended up seeing each other later. Oh gosh, yeah, we'll unpack my self-worth and self-esteem issues on another episode. I made it through my teens and my college years and was really starting to struggle with mental health. I was in group therapy as a teenager. I know I've talked about trigger warning. I self-harmed, and so I was in group therapy. In college, I started on medication. I did not see myself as a mother because of my mental health. I always felt like couple of different reasons. So one, I worried what I would pass down to future children. Would I perpetuate this? And two, could I be a good mom and have these mental health issues? I was impatient. I was angry at times. I didn't always have the wherewithal to take care of myself. And I worried tremendously, I think for good reason, that that would make me a terrible mother. I I know mothers today who shame themselves over how angry they get with their children. I have heard this from retreats I've been on to different scenarios where I've been in safe spaces with women who have shared how difficult it is not to get angry and lose their temper and say or do something that they might regret. And they put a lot of shame on themselves. And I foresaw that for me if I were to become a mother. So already in my early 20s, before I found a partner and got married, I didn't see that as part of my life. And what's interesting is when I think about where I thought I would be in the year 2000, it was always, oh, 25, married with 2 kids. Like I had to have the little life car from the game of life. I had to have, my pink person and the blue dot that went in the driver's seat of my car, and then the 2 kids in the back. We are taught from an early age that that was, or at least we were in the 80s when we were all playing the game of life, we were taught that that is what the American dream looked like. We had to fill that little car with those four spaces, or those four little plastic people. But by the time I was in my 20s, I was like, I just don't, I'm not thinking that that is for me. And that was okay. So I get married at age 25. I marry someone who is a dreamer. He is an actor and works at Starbucks and wants to be, you know, A-list celebrity. At least I think he did. I don't know. I just know he wanted to be an actor. We talked about moving to LA. Nowhere in that scenario did children really fit. We needed to spend every dime that we had on building this dream together, on possibly, we ended up buying a house, which talk about American dream. Okay, there's where we're at, and we're stretching our budget to its max. And even though my sister-in-law would always say there's never a perfect time to have kids, there was definitely fear around financial stability if we started a family. It didn't really matter for me because I didn't have that urge like 85% of women in America have. And I don't know what the global stats are, but I would be interested. There were a couple of countries that were mentioned where it's less than 15%, or I'm sorry, more than 15%. So there are some countries where there are less mothers than even in America. But I wasn't feeling that call. We had nieces and nephews, so that was fun to be around the kids, but not have that responsibility ourselves. And as time went on, and I was really driven in my career, I just, again, didn't see a place for that. And I was still struggling with mental health. I was back and forth with depression. Postpartum depression wasn't as commonly talked about as it is today. So when we do think about topics that are being normalized, that might be one of them that people are coming out and talking about and able to get the help that they need. But if we're talking about back in the mid 2000s, that wasn't something we were talking about. And I again played the tape. I saw this happening for me, that I was going to end up in this situation where I could barely take care of myself and struggled with just being alive every day. And what was I going to do to help raise a different human, raise a human? I also felt at times like I was bearing all the burden, pulling all the weight in my relationship. And so that was difficult because I didn't know how much help I was going to get. And with us both working and working odd hours, not always the same, it just felt very complicated. There was a fleeting moment in time where we were, I think, putting up a Christmas tree in our apartment in Houston that I thought to myself, he would make a really good dad. If I were going to have children, he would make a really good dad. But that's really the only thought I ever had about it. I didn't think to myself, gosh, I would make a really good mom. I only thought about it from that perspective of him wanting to be, or not necessarily wanting to be, but being great with the nieces and nephews and just having that natural ability that I didn't feel like I had. Part of it, looking back now, because it's always hindsight's 2020, right? And so looking back now, I know there was an element of me and my personality that struggled to let go of control and to be really lighthearted and silly. And that's part of in sobriety. I've embraced this really play it big and talk with my hands. And if you're watching this on Spotify, I'm adding the emphasis on that. I can be really silly these days, but during that time in my life, I could not. I could not let loose. And I thought, how am I going to relate to children? Like, I cannot, I don't want to play make believe. I don't want to play with Barbies anymore. I don't want to play games. I just don't get it. I'm not at that level. I realize now, again, in hindsight, that I was so rigid in my thinking and just not living to my fullest authentic self. Either way, that marriage ended. He ended up marrying someone with 2 kids. I don't know what their status is today, but I think it's great for him that he had stepchildren because he is absolutely, I'm sure, a great dad, a great stepdad. So I was back by myself on my own. I always had pets, so I had like either a cat or a dog, and ended up dating someone who had a 7-year-old daughter. And I really enjoyed stepping into a little bit of a stepmother role. We weren't married, but we were living together within a short amount of time. And I really liked having her in my life. And I would do birthday parties to the nines. I embraced everything that my mother had done for me, and she would throw amazing birthday parties in the backyard, in the skating rink. My mom just is still like a beautiful event planner. So she says that's the calling that she missed. And she would throw these crazy birthday parties with all these fun decorations and themes. And we had a circus theme one year and a pool party theme. And I wanted to bestow that upon my boyfriend's daughter. And we did a whole like fashion show. It was so much fun. And I needed to be there for her because he had a drinking problem and he wasn't always there for her. So I also felt like a little bit of a support role and a source of stability in that relationship, which really shouldn't have been on me, but I'm glad that I could serve that purpose for that year of my life. That was the closest I ever came to having my own children, and I loved that experience. I think that that gave me a glimpse into the fact that I would have been a good mother, but I never give myself enough credit for anything I do. So here I was not giving myself credit for my ability to take care of another human being. I moved to Arizona. I met Ryan, and by then, like I was 39 years old, and I had had so many coworkers at Academy tell me they were having kids at 40, and they would tell me like, "Oh, it's don't worry, like it doesn't matter when, you will wonder why you ever didn't do this. Like it will be so magical and you will realize like this is what was missing." And I kicked myself at the time, like thinking that I needed to get to this, that this was a step, this was a milestone in my life that needed to happen. And every time I would hear one of them talk about it, I would think, gosh, I'm missing out. I am missing out on motherhood. And it really concerned me. But when I met my husband and I was 39, he was about to be 40. I have a stepdaughter who's a teenager, but I knew that he and I were just at a point in our lives that we were not going to start a family at 40. And at that point in my life, I had to reconcile that idea of never, like, I am never going to have children. And I've always been okay with that. I've I have not regretted that decision. There are times in my life where I wonder how life might have been. What would it look like if I'd had kids? But here's the beauty of my life today, being in the 15%, being one in seven, is I get to be present and hold space for a multitude of people in all different walks of life. I am, I have the freedom of time and the flexibility in my schedule to be able to offer my gifts in a way that brings people the same joy and comfort that a mother might. And especially if, just like I started at the top of the conversation, if you do not have the relationship with your mother that you would like to have, then people like me in society are able to help with that. I know of a friend who does a lot of inner child work, and that's really something that we've also sort of normalized in terms of mental health, as going back and mothering ourselves, giving our inner selves, those little parts of us from when we were children and had an adverse experience, being able to go back and mother that piece of us. So whether you're finding that from a therapist or a healer or a bonus mom or a woman in your life who is a role model like a mom, like a second mom, then you can find that in your life, whether or not you are a mother or have a relationship with your mother. So I had to look at how to redefine that in my own life. And then I get to have that mothering energy and expand it to all different situations. I love teaching the greenhouse school. So there's a homeschool program in Heiko, and a couple of times each semester, I volunteer and teach the greenhouse kids. There's some mixed reviews on yoga. Not all of them love it. Not all of them love being inside in the studio or having to follow certain rules, but I love teaching them because it brings out that part of me that I thought was completely asleep or absent. And I get to have fun with these kids and be a child myself for an hour at a time. The smiles that come to their faces, the innocence and their ability to get into a pose or practice a breath that is just exactly at face value without all of the thoughts that happen in our adult heads where we're thinking about 50 other things we should be doing. The kids are there and they're having fun. They teach us a lesson about presence that we cannot find anywhere else. Now, that said, I do have a puppy, and I have a 10-month-old puppy, and she teaches me presence because if she wants to come cuddle in my lap, I'll be the first to drop everything and cuddle with her. Or she loves to be picked up like a baby and slung over my shoulder and just snuggle like that. So I will take all of those moments that I can get. That's another way I get to be a mom, is to be a dog mom. That is the choice that so many millennials and I'm sure into Gen Z have made, is they have fur babies, and they're content with that. And I see pictures that uh, you know represent all these different milestones in their lives, just like you would see people picturing their 1-year-old child's birthday. So some of us choose to have four-legged children, and that's okay too. And I love that these days, when people say Happy Mother's Day, a lot of times they'll say, hey, you're a mom, you have pets, you have your special dog or your cat, or, your Cookie's mom or Jolene's mom. So those are my dogs. I get to be a mother in different ways. There's the greenhouse kids, there's pets, there is the compassion and empathy that I give to others, whether that's coaching or teaching yoga or professionally, as I've been a leader the last few years, I get to bring that element of myself into every conversation and every situation that I can to help people feel supported. And if I had to think about a way or a characteristic of a mother that is actually, a couple words come to mind: nurturing and supportive. And there are not always times where we get those from our actual mother. So anyone who can give you that nurturing energy is like a mom. I've had one in my life, Margaret. When I worked at Academy, she was not my boss originally, and I ended up working for her. She became like a second mom. My parents lived several hours away, and so I had someone who was right there in my town, available to help me when I needed a shoulder to cry on, when I had a bad breakup, when I needed to feel safe. Margaret was always there. And now I have younger people in my community that I always think about, like, oh, am I their second mom? Am I their Margaret? Like, now I'm 50, and so I get to be that second mom to somebody and think, oh, that I got that. And now I'm old enough to be the second mom. It's a little bit of a rude awakening, like, but it's okay because I appreciate being able to pay that forward. I will have no regrets about not having children. I will not. And I hope that out of the 15%, that those of us who chose that path feel the same. I don't want to touch on the raw nerves that I might hit if I talk about infertility. But I do want to address the fact that out of that 15%, obviously the statement was whether by choice or due to complications. In my life and in my genealogy, there have been complications to pregnancy. And even though that didn't play a big part in my decision, it was always in the back of my mind. Will I have issues? Will that be part of that mental health journey, that if I have trouble getting pregnant or I have trouble with pregnancy, am I able to handle that with my mental health? I I know I can't know how it feels to be in someone's shoes who has suffered loss or who is going through IVF and desperately wants to be a mom. My choice not to be a mother does not discount the women who desperately want that and have not been able to through traditional methods, through biological methods and pregnancy. So my heart goes out to whatever part of that 15%, whatever that 1 in 7 that did not choose that path and mourns that every day. And that's the part that, we're rocking the boat by talking about this, by saying these things happen, and we need to be respectful of women who wanted to and have been unable to be a mother. I have had people say to me, and maybe this is my rock the damn boat moment. I have had people say to me, you don't understand, you don't have kids. Or, oh, you don't get it, you don't have kids. Can we please take the phrase, you don't have kids, out of our vocabulary? I don't care if you want to talk about your kids and say, I'm really busy because my kids keep me so busy. Or I am unable to pursue all of the things that you do because my kids keep me busy. I would love for that to be the way that I am spoken to. I will sometimes say to people like, oh, I can do all of these things because I don't have kids. So I will say that at times when people are like, "Oh my gosh, you stay so busy, you do so many things, you're chasing all these dreams. It's amazing." And I admit, I have more time in my schedule because I don't have soccer games and school plays and PTA meetings and all of these things that tie up my busy mom friends' time. I respect that juggling act. Trust me, because when I look at my Kanban board and my to-do list and I look at all of those things, I'm like, okay, yeah, if each of those columns had a kid's name at the top of it, I would understand exactly how that feels to try to be juggling uh, three different kids' activities, and somebody's got ballet practice, but dad has to take them to soccer practice. Let's get into, single moms who have to do all of those things. Motherhood is going to look different for everybody. And for me, it's going to look like not ever giving birth to a child. I had a scare early on in my teenage years, and I don't know, but doesn't matter. It was neither here nor there because it didn't happen. But uh, yeah, I think back now to that moment in time and think, gosh, I would not have been prepared at all then. So here we are. I'm 50. I am not a mom. I am one in seven American women who does not have a child at age 50. I love how my friends' families have grown. They are welcoming grandchildren into their lives. My nephew had twins a year ago, so my parents are now great grandparents, which is incredible. So it is truly a joy to watch families flourish and to see mother-child relationships that are harmonious and rewarding and supportive. And I get to find that in other ways in my own life. And I hope that anyone who is listening who has been on the same path that I have, or who really wanted that bond and was unable to find it in this life, that you know that there are 15% of us who love and support and adore you in the way that a mother would, and that a mother that you would have brought to this world. So I hope that you are finding other ways to express that energy. And I hope that you are not attaching any shame to your experience, because there is nothing to be ashamed of about not having children. There is nothing to be ashamed of if your body didn't cooperate, or you couldn't find the right partner, or you had a partner that was not going to be excellent father material and you made a choice that was brave and you went out on your own. There are 1,000 different scenarios that can make you the one in seven. And I stand united with you. I stand united with the 85% who are moms and who have a completely different set of challenges in their lives. What I want us to walk away from is supporting those friends in our lives who don't have children, to think before we speak about what we assume their lives look like because they don't have children, and to show the level of respect that I know you would for someone, and not knowing their story, not knowing how they got to that point in their lives as a childless person, which I kind of cringe at that phrase, but it was what came to mind. Yeah. I am Christy Hughes. I am speaking out on things that are important to my heart that maybe are things we don't always talk about. Go back and, vote on the poll intro 1, 2, or 3. Recovering people pleaser, talking about boundaries, talking about messy, real stuff, talking about fear of rejection, guilt, or shame, which is certainly something that the 15%, the 1 in 7, might be dealing with. So let it go. I am here for you. I am Christy Hughes. Go out and rock the damn boat. Follow and subscribe the show on Apple or Spotify, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.